Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the newest edition of Levelytics on Video. I am your host, Jordan, and I welcome you guys back. It's good to be back. I took off Friday last week in the midst of all the chaos in the crypto markets, and I'm sure everyone was freaking out. There's a lot of action going on, a lot of rumors going on. People were worried about Michael Saylor, if BTC was rugging back to 15K. Those are usually good signals, by the way, when people start talking like that. Not that those are tradable, not that those are actionable. Those are just kind of anecdotal things that you take note of in the heat of the moment. God, I feel like I've gotten to the point in crypto where I'm just so used to the chaos, the dumping, the adverse price action, predatory price action in general, that I was completely, it might have been the first time in my entire crypto career where I was just completely unbothered by the price action that took place. And I was kind of busy taking care of a bunch of different things too, so that might have been part of it as well. Just for a little bit of context for people, I started Levelytics back in October 2025, right at the crypto market top. Unfortunately, that timing just was not very good. You don't really get to pick sometimes when you start these ventures, and unfortunately, the market doesn't agree with you. And I've gotten to a point where I was spending a lot of money on data, a bunch of data sources, paying for a database that was costing me $1,000 a month, and I kind of reached a breaking point this past week. Just separate from the price action, like I said, where I was like, I'm spending way too much money on this, especially because I'm not making any money from the channel. So I'm kind of going through a rebuild of my data suite. In a way that doesn't require me to use a database. I think everything will be built way slower. The code will run slower. I used to do data refreshes 3 times a day onto the Dude Terminal website. Now that's probably going to be just once every 24 hours. But yeah, I'm really just peeling things back, because at this point, because I'm not making any money from this, it's gotten to a point where this is just a hobby, basically, right? So I don't want this to be an expensive hobby. I want this to be something that's fun. I don't freak out about. It doesn't cause me stress because I'm not making any money from it. The goal is to continue doing the newsletter and the channel, given the right circumstances. It's probably going to be a side hobby, so I'm probably going to try to find something else to work on during the daytime. And it really just depends if, let's just say I go find a job with a new employer, if they're cool with me continuing the channel. So we'll just wait and see. I think for the time being, though, I'm definitely going to continue the channel. And nonetheless, as you guys know, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty obsessed with markets, and I think this price action is really exciting. I think, the more you get panic inside the market, it gives you a better opportunity to finally put in a bottom. There's always a lot of complacency near the bottom. At the same time, you want some sort of panic to kick in. And in my opinion, what took place last week was true market-wide panic. And it was the first signs of across the board panic I've seen probably since the liquidation event in October 2025. So let's look at the charts. Let's look at the data, and keep in mind all these all the data prints for all my charts that are not on TradingView. The data is current as of Friday for some of them, and then some of them I found a way to update for today using some of the rebuild stuff that I'm doing. But yeah, let's just get into the data, and I'll show you guys what I mean by I think that this was a panic market bottom. But let's start off with the Bitcoin chart, right? For a long time, I removed all the labeling from the Bitcoin chart for you guys have seen all the labels before. This blue area has always been known as the value area. Ever since we tapped it at the beginning of February, I was like, okay, if price ever revisits here, this should be viewed as value, right? The number one thing that people need to take into account when looking at price action is if there's very little volume, it means that there's just not that much interest in the level to be traded, right? And that there's not much going on at that point, right? So I think the worst case scenario that you could have gotten was you get into this value area and there was no volume trading, right? And you see that here at the bottom. That's not the case. There was a lot of volume trade. There's a lot of coins, a lot of positioning changing hands, and this is exactly what you want to see, right? And this indicates that a lot of coins changing hands is telling you that people are freaking out. People want to get out of their positions, and then there's somebody on the other side of that trade. It's like, happily, this is a value area. Maybe they have the chart marked out the same way that we do. So this is the good first sign. And like you guys saw, and like you've seen me talking about over the past couple weeks, past couple months, I got bullish up here at 80K, this whole 80K level. I was like, okay, this is the big line in the sand. We started to get some blue candle prints for my momentum indicator. So I was like, okay, it's go time. Let's just gas this thing higher if we can, right? And it just never came, right? And then we started getting this little grind downwards in red candles, bearish momentum, crappy price action, and I held on to some of my BTC positioning, right, for the Levellytics book while this was grinding down. And then I got to a point right around this 75K level where I was like, you know what, something's off. The vibes are off. You know, if BTC is going to trade like crap, I have no interest in holding it. And, you know, it worked out pretty well that, you know, the market dumped right afterwards, right? But as you guys know as well, right, you can look at different things. You can look at things on multiple time frames to gauge what's going on. So this indicator at the bottom shows you the number of red candles in a row, right, for my momentum indicator, and blue candles in a row, right? Let's go to the 4-hour time frame though. I want to show you guys something, right? So let me zoom out. You can see February over here. Obviously, you know, my computer screen's not really big, so you just bear with me, right? This is February, right? This was the capitulation bottom in February when we got down into the low 60K level. And you can see that the capitulation took place on like February 5th. And this was around 113 4-hour candles in a row around that point. And you can see over here, capitulation again, right? Beginning of June 2026. And the capitulation took place around 127 candles in a row. So one thing I really do like about this is like, I always love to take into account how long a trend's been going for, right? How long a trend has been lasting, because what you really want is you want time-based capitulation, which you get time-based capitulation by looking at the number of candles in a row this happens, right? Time. And then you get actual volume and price capitulation, which you get hitting the value levels with lots of volume, right? This is exactly the combination of all these different factors where you can take it into account. You can say it to yourself out loud and be like, yeah, that feels like capitulation to me. There's sufficient evidence here for me to get a little bit excited and think that price action is constructive here. What you don't want is, right, you start getting a small increase in the trend where it's only like 30 candles in a row and you're already down to 60K, right? And then it's on low volume. It's like, all right, it's over. You know, it's going to slip right through because there's obviously not much panic. And that's the beauty of what this, you know, we ripped the Band-Aid off in some capacity, right? If we had gone down slowly, we just kept grinding slowly down, right? And it just had happened over weeks. That's when you get these slow, low volume bleed outs, right? And that's when you'll get a large volume candle down into the 40K level, right? And yeah, obviously people, you know, I think there's maybe people that are excited to buy low, or if there's people that just want the market to bounce, recover, so we can kind of get back to regularly planned business, right? Where like, okay, let's just start pumping the price again. Let's just get on with it. That's the beauty of how vicious and down only this price action was in this whole move, right? I mean, it went from 73K down to 59K in a matter of 4 days. You know, that is a gigantic drop. That is a lot of carnage. It's 20% in 20% in 4 days. This is how you can get people to puke their bags and cause that panic from a higher level up. So there is a beauty to how violent and how quick this move down was, right? So I just wanted to show you guys that, and that's how you can get a good feel for like the capitulation going on lower time frames. And I encourage everybody, you know, keep in mind these indicators, especially with, you know, AI these days, you can build this type of stuff yourself, and it doesn't have to be with my momentum indicator, right? Because you guys don't have access to it on TradingView, but you could be like number of periods in a row that price is trading below the 20 period moving average or something like that. You could come up with whatever you want to do, but that is a good way to track time, right? And that's how you get time-based capitulation. And then price action goes down violently. That's price-based capitulation. And then you get volume showing that people are puking, right? It's the combination of the three that you're like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. You can make the argument that that was capitulation. Okay, so let's go back to the daily time frame though. Right, so this is BTC. I mean, this looks good. I mean, after everything that took place, I feel pretty good about this level holding. You know, Michael Saylor came out and said he ended up buying Bitcoin actually instead of selling. I don't really know what to make of that. And, you know, the reality is the way I like to play markets, I'm not trying to obsess over narratives or worry about what other people are doing. I like to look at the data and the price action, and I think that tells you everything you need to know. And that helps me reach my own conclusions without having to obsess about things that are completely out of my control, right? And it just, you know, it keeps you less emotional, right? Because you're like, I mean, if you're worried about the psychology of Michael Saylor, it's like, Jesus, dude, like, who gives a shit? So yeah, I feel pretty good about this being a bottom. And the good news is the Levellytics book had limited damage throughout this whole thing. So to date, the Levellytics book is the blue line at the top, the green line is BTC returns, and the red line is altcoin returns since October 2025, which is when Levellytics started, right? So Levellytics is down 25%. Bitcoin is down 46%, and then altcoins are down 68%. So, as the market went down, I was sitting in things like Hype, Near, Zcash. I got out of all of them before the damage was inflicted, especially Zcash, right? I actually had a stop loss at the bottom of the range, and the second it clipped, I was like, this doesn't look good. I mean, this is going to rug, especially with the volatility that's been going on with Zcash. Let's talk about Zcash for a second. I actually have a lot of opinions about it, but this is the chart, right? So they're part of the reason why I was also willing to sell. As you can see, before this whole rug that was taking place, red candle prints. Like, I was like, okay, there's bearish momentum here. There's something going on. There's reason to be nervous, right? And tons of volume down, right? Like, so the red candle print kicked in at $630. Price went down to 240, 250. I mean, this is a gnarly pullback, but this is kind of what you want to see. The way people were talking about Zcash on Twitter, just so we're clear, I really do not give a shit about Zcash, right? I think this whole Bitcoin, it being private Bitcoin narrative is colossal bullshit. The fact that it has auditability issues of the supply just tells you it's not Bitcoin. Don't call it private Bitcoin. It's just a privacy coin. It's assurances over the supply count are as valid as they are with Monero. And Monero doesn't try to lie to everybody about it being a 21 million, right? It just doesn't happen. So let's just be honest about what it is, and then we can go from there. And frankly, from a trading perspective, I actually love this coin right now. Despite that, you know what I mean? I really don't care about the narrative. I'm not really convinced that anyone actually cares at all about privacy, to tell you the truth. Like, it's just always like this convenient thing to pump at any given time, and all the insiders decide they're going to pump it, and all the funds get together. I don't know what goes on, but this thing is so volatile. The volatility and the attention that this thing draws means that you should be paying attention to it. It's kind of one of those things where volatility and attention, the second something gets a spark, it is very hard to make it go away. And it just seems to me that Zcash, it's not gone away. With how many people were grave dancing on top of it when this bug or whatever came out that the supply might have been exploited, and there might have been people printing unaudited Zcash coins. There was a lot of graveyard dancing. People were making fun of all the Zcash holders like they were idiots. And like I said, I've gotten to a point in markets as well where I just don't really care. Like, especially in crypto, where I just do not really care what these things do. I really just care more about like their behavior and the price action. And, if there's a story that goes with it, that's even better, right? That always gives something a little bit more legs. And I think Zcash just has the story. It has the backers. There's a lot of smart people online defending it. Good for them. I don't necessarily agree with them from a fundamental basis, but if there's a good enough story and people with deep pockets that believe in it, I'm okay with that, right? That's completely fine. But yeah, I would not be surprised at all if Zcash bounced back. Is it a buy for me right now? No. Red candles, I will not buy. Especially with all the volatility that's been going on. You could get some situation where, God knows, you hit the bottom of this range again of $520, $530, and it just pinballs around here. And that's when you start, that's the grinder. I also would not be surprised at all if it just went back up for it. Some dude, some whale got some disgustingly large fill at a very low price level, and maybe the price just goes vertical from there. I'm not really sure, but I just want to put this on y'all's radar because I think a lot of people are writing it off. A lot of people are like, oh, this thing's dead. Even if you fundamentally, a lot of my videos, the newsletter and everything, it's about trading. We are not here to have strong opinions about the fundamentals. And, people talk about, do you want to be right or do you want to make money, right? I do not care about being right. I do not care about arguing with people about the fundamental, real, true story of what Zcash truly is, right? I just care that there's enough people that believe in it, and there's volatility, there's attention. Whenever it dumps, people cheer. Whenever it pumps, people cheer, right? You want people paying attention. And this is exactly what you need, right? Because these non-cash flow generating assets, right? They're meme coins, basically. Like, that's what these, like, Zcash is effectively a meme coin with some sort of narrative that there's a fundamental catalyst behind it, which is even better. It's like a made up fundamental story, if that makes sense. So this thing's alive. Like, I would not write this off yet. Not that I'm buying it today. Like I said, I sold it I think I had a stop loss at $510 or something like that. So that's where I got stopped out, and it just nuked after that. Like I said, the vibe seemed off, with all the Sailor crap going on. And I've been saying it on Twitter too, that there were these coins that were performing very strong in the market, like Zcash, Near, Hype, and all that. I've been around crypto long enough to know, people are like, oh, they're avoiding the pain. They're going to be fine. Bitcoin's going to nuke and they're going to be fine. It's like, it never works out that way. BTC starts to nuke and people start to panic and nobody, like, you're just going to trust the fact that this time is different. No, you can't do that. So I set stop losses on all of my trades because they were all trading sideways at one point, and I was like, forget it, dude, I'll buy this back later. But yeah, pay attention to Zcash. Here's another coin I want to put on y'all's radar, and people are talking about it a lot. Hyperliquid. I've already rebought some today on this blue candle so far. Keep in mind the blue candle does not confirm until the daily close. But it's up 7.5% today. If it closes the day up 7.5%, I'm buying more. With the Levelytics book, I think I put 15% of the book back into it today. And I sold it. I don't remember, but I sold it before all the as the panic was kicking in, because I was like, I don't really want to see what's on the other side of this. Actually, but my opinion going into it was this is going to be a speed bump for Hyperliquid. And what I mean by that is that let me zoom out a little bit. And I said this before, right? Price action for a lot of Hyperliquid's history was just super choppy and weird, right? It was just like very difficult to trade, especially with a momentum indicator. In my opinion, that changed here. That changed when these candles is when Coinbase announced that they were basically bending the knee to Hyperliquid on a perps front, and that they were going to start supporting them as a business. In my opinion, this is where, so moving forward, we're kind of in like that territory of trending price action. So once you decide that BTC bottom is in, this thing's probably just naturally going to bounce and leave people in the dust. And I think people are going to take too long to make the decision. That's what's tough about these periods after you have these capitulation bottoms, is that there's a lot of people that are just really mentally scarred and emotional about everything, and they just want to step away from the market because that feels good mentally. The reality is you have to pay attention to what's going on and take everything into context. And in my opinion, the true context is this was a capitulation bottom for BTC, and that hype is a runaway freight train. So I'm going to buy a blue candle. And I think the easiest way I'm viewing this is that, like, right, this is where the panic was, right, on these red candles. If you get a daily close below 56, I think you'd be like, all right, forget it. The bulls have left the building at that point. And that whatever story people want to tell you, it's just like people don't care enough. But in my opinion, this is going to just run away soon. And then another coin I'm paying attention to is Lighter. Lighter is blue candles just hanging out. It dumped a little bit on all of this craziness, but it never changed even candle color on the daily chart. This is some serious momentum. Hold on one second. Let me draw a horizontal ray right here, right? Boom. Like, this is beautiful. It's like breaking out of a range after just some gnarly price action for a while. I mean, this looks good. Whether or not it outperforms hype remains to be seen, right? We're still printing red candles for this. If this prints blue, though, unfortunately, the exchange that I use for the Levelytics book does not support Lighter, so I wouldn't be able to make the swap from hype into Lighter. But this is something I'm considering doing with my personal money. If I start getting blue candle prints for the Lighter hype USD pairs, I'll swap some hype into Lighter at that point and be like, okay, let's just pick the fastest horse of these perp dexes, right? There's just both of them are just a sexy fundamental story. They're kind of the new up and coming protocols and this new wave of crypto that people are talking about, where if there's actual fundamentals, the prices going higher are supported by real cash flow, which honestly I love. I mean, I think we've been waiting for all this for a very long time. So yeah, I think there is true hype behind that. That's something that institutional investors can get behind too. And I think that's what's most important, because if you have a bunch of like just small pocketed crypto degens buying shit, it doesn't sustain. That's how you get like these nasty price action candles. Whereas like, hype traded pretty, this is pretty whatever you call it, orderly price action. The price dumped, but I mean, this is nothing crazy despite like all the craziness going on in the market, right? So these are the type of price action you can get for some of these possibly runaway protocols in crypto that are actually earning cash flows, right? I'll take you guys to one more chart, which is near, right? Because that was a chart that I also not dumped it myself, obviously, but I sold the coin, right? See, this is a range low, right? So when the price revisited the 225 level, I had a stop loss, boom, got stopped out. This thing, if this thing just goes back to the highs, I wouldn't mind buying it again. I really don't mind top blasting these coins that are making money. And I think if you're in the market and you're starting to mentally fade this idea that these coins with cash flows are not going to outperform all the other garbage that's in the space, that's a bad way to look at it. I think people are really turning their heads. People are sick of owning garbage. I think these coins will probably run the hardest in a most reliable manner. You might get these one-off random shit coins that go for it. But you should be looking for stories. People at this point, people are trying to become fundamental investors in crypto, and they want to see signs of life. And near projects like near, hype, lighter, these are projects that people are using. So these are things to pay attention to in the future. And like I said, you look at the BTC chart, it is very constructive in my opinion. Like maybe you get a little bit more chopped down here. I'm not really sure, but it also would not surprise me with after all the panic that went on. You just get a heavy bounce. You never even know, right? This is like I said, there were signs of capitulation on that simple thing that I showed you. It was just down only price action for a while on the 4-hour chart, similar to the February bottom that we had. Yeah, and I think my base case moving forward, if I was to guess, we get a sideways summer from BTC. And I think some of these strong fundamental assets, they might just go for it in the meantime. And now that we had this high volatility event, right? Hold on one second. Let's look at DVOL, which DVOL measures BTC volatility on a forward 30-day basis, right? And it spiked, right? You can see it. Like the last big spike was in February where it went up to 81. You got a little spike up here. And normally this thing just bleeds out, right? Until you get a high volatility period. So if that's it, I mean, and volatility just starts to bleed out for BTC again, that I think will be a good go signal for alts, for the quality alts at least, right? So that's something else to keep in mind. But yeah, so that's it. So let's move on to the metrics. Okay, so this chart shows the average open interest per perp pair, right, on Bybit, and it calculates the z-score, right? So low values shows you that is relatively low open interest for altcoins on a 30-day basis, and then the high values show you that open interest is high. So let's zoom in a bit, right? This goes all the way back to July 2025, right? So at the top here, right, we got on early May 2026, you started getting over leveraged, right? So you have BTC trying to break through the range highs, not the range highs, through like this huge level around 80K, right, which is a huge resistance level on the BTC chart with a lot of leverage on the board. So that's kind of a dangerous situation, right? You're going into resistance with a lot of people that are probably uncomfortably out of position if the price starts to go against them, right? Now you have a capitulation bottom with what I showed you on the price chart, right? You from a volume time perspective and price perspective, like I said, right? The quickness of this drop was gigantic, and you wiped out a lot of open interest too on a relative basis, right? So this is a pretty healthy print that, at least from a 30-day point of view, that there's very little leverage in the system, right? So this is a good clean out. This is just another marker that we had a capitulation event and that this was possibly a bottom for BTC and the crypto space at large. This looks good. I like this. So this is exactly what you want to see, right? I think sometimes when you're looking at metrics and the price chart and you're thinking, oh, these things need to be a certain way, right? And if they don't, something's off. I think that's a very normal, rational way to think about it, right? It's like, oh, the bottom will be in, if I'm looking at this metric and I'm telling myself what would be a good time to start looking for a bottom in the crypto markets, I'd be like, oh, when this metric reaches a very low z-score value, which is this is negative 2.64, right? That's low. That is a reasonable time to start considering, yeah, maybe like we've deleveraged the space a little bit and we're good to go. So this looks good. We're starting to see more and more evidence from an open interest perspective, right? So this is what we like to see. On to the next metric. So this shows the percentage of perp pairs on Binance that have abnormally large volume, and how you know it's abnormally large volume is you compare it to volume over the past 3 months. So you can see we got a very large print on this drop. Let me zoom in a little bit. One second, sorry. Let me fix this axis so you can get a good view of it. Boom, right? So as price is going into the value level that we talked about in the trading view chart, around 60K, you're getting heavy volume. A large percentage of perp pairs had large volume. The last time you had this was October 10th, 2025. That was the last big print. You got another one here November 21st, but there's not much to look at here. You can't even really tell, right? Whereas this one, it flatlined for a long time, then boom, big rip up. So yeah, this is another sign, right? Like I said, not only do you have large BTC volume, this is the Coinbase chart, a lot of volume on Coinbase, which you'd like to see. That means a lot of Americans and institutional players are probably changing hands in coins. Good, right? And then here, you have a large percentage of perpetual swap pairs for altcoins that are trading hands too. So a lot of people are freaking out in their perps positions as they're getting steamrolled, and they think everything's going to nuke to shit, or they're getting liquidated, right? So this is another good sign that you have a panic bottom kicking in, right? And stack that on top of the low open interest Z score, right? So open interest down, volume up, panic for alts across the board. Good. That's what you like to see. Boom, another box checked. Now let's look at technicals. This shows the percentage of pairs that have a low RSI reading, right? This is like technical analysis now, right? And the spikes on this chart tell you that there are a lot of pairs have oversold RSI readings, right? Anytime you get these green dots, it shows you when there's a lot of action going on. So let me zoom in a little bit. Give me a second. Let me fix this. Yeah, you can see, right? These spikes happen at bottoms. Spike, bottom. In August 2024. Liquidation event, February 2025. Spike at the bottom here. You can see that, right? You get spikes on October 10th, 2025. Spike in February. Boom. At the Pico bottom on February 5th, 2026. Then we get another spike here going into the lows. Another signal that a lot of assets are oversold, right? So this is what you want to see. A lot of pairs are oversold with lots of volume, which means a lot of coins changed hands, a lot of open interest wiped out, BTC into range lows at a value level, high volume, and it happened violently and quickly, right? These things are just, you just add them up. Continue on, right? But yeah, this looks good too. A lot of assets are oversold with low RSI readings. Okay, so this is the average 30-day return for altcoins on Bybit, right? And the value on the drop was minus 22% over the past 30 days when the price dropped down here. And this is a historically low level, right? You get a lot of washouts and periods that prices got, dislocated from liquidation events, or big drops happened, right? The last time you had values this low was in February 2026, right? So that's another thing. Returns on a 30-day basis are very low, right? You like if they were elevated still, it's like, okay, there's more meat on the bone. There's more people that have not panicked yet because they're still in plenty of profit on their positions, right? But the reality is a lot of people are down 20% plus at least on their altcoins over the past 30 days, right? It was a heavy drop from May to June. Sell in May, as they say, right? So yeah, this also looks good. And then, yeah, this shows the Levalytics, the blue line at the top shows the cash allocation of the Levalytics book, right, as a percentage of the total portfolio. So this high value up here at 100 means 100% of the book was in cash over the weekend. Because, obviously the prices weren't going to bounce over the weekend. We've gotten to the point in crypto markets, we used to get excited, get nervous about weekend price action. Now it's like nothing happens, unless you're in a disgusting bear trend, prices just continue to sell off. But, there was too much to be waiting on for people come Monday for any action to really happen on the weekend. So I was like, forget it. Why even have the exposure? I can wait until I start getting some blue candle prints again. And so these, the red and green lines show the BTC and altcoin 30-day returns, right? And you want to make sure, right, if you're using a momentum strategy, that your cash allocation is moving inverse to the price action, right? So if prices are down, you should be increasing cash, right? And that's exactly what happened. You can see that altcoin and BTC 30-day returns flipped negative, right around the middle of May, right? And that's when I just started moving to cash more and more, right? And that's exactly what you need to be doing. So this is a good way to check yourself, though. And if you keep all of your money in places where you can ping an API to do it, ideally, then you can just check it yourself. You can just use whatever AI subscription I used to build that out, and I assume that wouldn't be too complicated. This did not take a whole lot of time and effort to build out. So yeah, this is a good little fact checker for me when I'm like, okay, am I actually executing the way I should be, right? This is the easiest way if you're a momentum trader to be like, yes, this makes sense. Prices are down, returns are negative over X time frame that I'm paying attention to, so I need to be selling to cash. So that's exactly what I did. So this is one of those things that gets me excited, though. You know, you're like, okay, I'm doing exactly what I planned on doing. I'm sticking to the plan. But yeah, and like I said, the Levelytics returns are better than BTC and altcoins for the time being. And yeah, I feel good about it. I'm ready to start buying again. And you know, BTC, we have 2 hours left in the daily candle. It's sitting at 63.4K. Yeah, this looks decent right now. There's no need to panic. I'm not going to try to get chopped up or buy any of this. You know, I'm going to wait for blue candle prints again for BTC. However, like I said, in the meantime, I'm actually pretty okay with buying some blue candles on some of these assets. You know, like I said, the only allocation in the Levelytics book right now is 15% hype. And I think you could set a stop for a close below 56. That's what I'm doing, right? That, like a daily close below 56. We've already had a lot of the panic go on in the market, right? So I assume if this happened, it would be more quiet, it'd be less violent, and I would have an opportunity to close it without like sweating my balls off and freaking out about it, right? But this looks good. This shows you like it's a healthy bounce off of the lows. Lots of panic around here, and like I said, I think in theory this thing should be a runaway freight trade. So let's see how the last 2 hours close out. If it's a blue candle, I mean, unless it just like completely compresses back down to like the $60 level. I'd be probably a little bit more nervous about that idea. But, you know, 15% of the book is in hype as I'm doing this video. I'll probably add to that, maybe even double the position. Because, like I said, I think this is an opportunity for the book to outperform the rest of the market while people are still licking their wounds and trying to figure out what's going on. But yeah, guys, otherwise, I think that's it. I will keep you guys posted on what comes next for Levelytics. In the meantime, I'm going to be trying to fix and refactor my data and all of my code, so that way I'm not reliant on a database anymore, because like I said, it was costing me way too much money. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section, shoot me a message on Twitter at permabullnino, or comment on the newsletter when I send it out tomorrow morning. I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and you know, have a good week. Thank you so much.